Hi all, it's good to see you. Welcome along to our seventh, hang on, I'll just make this work. Our seventh webinar for the European Coalition for Community Living. We've got quite small numbers on online today, so if you do have questions, please type them in and we will get to them at the end. If you don't, then we'll probably finish the webinar quite early. It's one of those times of year when lots of people are off on holiday and they've got their children home from school and other things are taking over. So we're well aware of that, but we'll make sure that we post everything up on YouTube so that you can see it and replay it afterwards. So this is our seventh webinar. It's got a couple of really good speakers joining us today. One who's going to be talking a bit about supporting people with really complicated support needs, and another who's going to be talking a bit about work in the south of England around helping people connect much more into their communities. So just reminding people who are online, if you've not been on before, if you want to ask a question, you'll see there's a little question box that you can type it in, and Ines will come to the questions once Sam and Heather have finished their presentations. Or you can wait till after the presentation and raise your hand and then we'll come to you. If you have any problems with the technical stuff, then at the bottom there's a chat box and you can send a message to us, and if we can help them, we'll try and help you there. And we'll send out the slides, link to the recording as part of our newsletter, which will come out on Monday or Tuesday next week. And please do share those as widely as you want. We know that there's a couple of universities now that use some of these presentations, and so they're to go as wide as possible. So today online we've got Sam.
Hello.
We've got Heather.
Hello.
Ines.
Hello.
And me, Nick. And the two presentations we've got that we're going to cover today is Sam, who's going to be talking about planning with people with really complicated labels and support needs, many of whom have been in institutions for quite a long time, and how the approach that Sam and the team that she works with, how that approach to what they call life planning works, and gives you an idea of a very positive approach to supporting people who've had quite difficult lives to move on into a life of their design. And then we've got Heather, who's going to be talking about something called local area coordination, which is something that's, there's practice all over the world, a lot in Australia. Heather's work has been on the Isle of Wight, and she's going to be talking a bit about how it's kind of a strength-based approach to supporting people to get more involved and participating in their local communities, tackling some of that exclusion and isolation that people sometimes experience. So without further ado, I shall change screens to Sam, and over to you, Sam.
Hello. Okay, right, this is the first time I've ever done one of these, so hopefully people can see that. Yeah. Does that come up? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so my name is Sam Sly and I work all over the UK. I have been doing this type of planning, which isn't rocket science, I'd like to say to start with. It's just person-centered planning, probably for about over 10 years now. And I also work with an organisation called I'm Out of Here, and that's made up of all of us are independent consultants, I suppose, who work for ourselves but also come together to do planning for people. And at the moment we've got a contract with NHS England, or specialised commissioning they're called, to do plans for 100 of their people who are in hospitals here in the UK, to help get them out, but get them out in a way that means they're going to stay out of hospital and get the housing and the support that they need to live good lives. So the people we work with are people, they've got labels of challenging behaviour. However, when you do work with people, as I'm sure everybody's aware, you often find, or nearly always find, that actually it's not the person that's got the behaviour that needs challenging, it's the people that are preventing them getting a life. So I'm not minimising the fact that some people have sensory needs and needs that need really special thinking about how to support them. However, most people, if everybody tries to get to know them really well, can be supported very positively in houses like everybody else does in the community, doing the things that everybody else wants to do. They've got the same hopes and dreams as everybody else. So life planning then is a facilitative process, and by that I mean that when I or one of my colleagues is asked to plan with somebody, we are purely there to ensure that the people that know the person really well come up with the ideas and the things that need to happen for this person. It is bonkers to ask professionals that barely know somebody to come up with the support needs of somebody. I'm not saying that people don't have professional expertise in areas, but you know, at the end of the day, I think all of us, if we were asked who we'd want to plan our lives for us, if we couldn't do it for ourselves, we'd want our families and our loved ones to be doing that, and ourselves. So, you know, don't at all forget that people are often thought not to be able to think about what they need, but of course they can. So the facilitator's role is very much about organising and making sure that everybody's voice is listened to, which often doesn't happen in usual discharge planning, which is very professional based, you know, with the family having 5 minutes at the end or whatever. So we bring people together, we try and ensure that we're planning somewhere that they feel comfortable. So again, if somebody's been in hospital for a long time, it's not always the place that they feel like they can open up and talk about what they want and what they need. So we try and find a venue that they want to hold it in. It might be their family home, or it might be, we've had them in pubs before, or all over the place really. Special places. So I had a young man whose passion was steam trains, and so we held his planning day. There's a local specialist railway, you know, steam railway place, and they have some old carriages that they've turned into kind of meeting rooms really. So for his, we held it in one of these carriages. When he wasn't interested anymore because there were steam trains going by, he'd go and have a ride up and down on the steam train and then come back and see what we were doing. So it made it a good day for him. He knew what we were doing, and everybody felt relaxed, which was, you know, which was really lovely, a lovely way of doing it. Anyway, I'm going on and on here. So we got, these are quotes from some of the people that we've worked with. And so if you can see what people are saying here, I think the way that life planning is done, because it values the person, and because they're centre of what's going on, and because sometimes this is the first time that's happened, people actually value the whole day really. And so I think it's just so different from perhaps the kind of meetings that we usually have for people. And I guess as well, you know, that's something that we should all think about really, because this isn't hard to do. It's not hard to put people and families at the centre of what we do, but we still don't seem to naturally do that. But it makes such a difference, and you get so much more quality information when you're doing that. Again, we found often that families find out or are a lot clearer about what the person needs, and the person's much clearer as well. So we start with a blank canvas basically when we're planning with somebody. So we've got no preconceived ideas about what they want to do, where they want to live, who they want to help them, any of those things. which is really, really useful, but also a kind of revelation, I suppose, for people, because usually, again, with discharge planning, the social worker or the person whose job it is tasked to go and find where this person's going to live has already got a list of services that they're trying to slot this person into, rather than, as we do, starting with a blank canvas and building up what this person needs before either going out to see if it's already there or finding you know, a normal house or a house through housing association or whatever it is, and then building up a team around the person as well. So we've also found that people who shun their normal meetings and won't get involved in them because they know they just talk about the bad stuff and they're not worth going to, actually stay in these meetings for the whole time. They usually last a day, and people say, oh my God, we can't afford to take that kind of time to talk about somebody. But actually, when you think about the amount of information that we've got together in a day, it's very much the same as you getting social workers and professionals to come and do their assessments individually, but you get it all in one go. And if people have disagreements about things or have different views, then you've got the ability to talk about it and to come to compromise, or to, you know, to really thrash out some of these difficulties that we see prevent people moving on, or, you know, rumble around for years because people and professionals have different ideas about what's needed around things. So the person chooses who comes, and as I say, because this is based on, well, I didn't say actually, but what we talk about in this day is positives. So we talk about the things that are important to the person, what they're good at, what their strengths are, what their skills are. The one bit that is a hard bit is going through the person's life so far, and we always start with that because we feel you can learn ever such a lot from what's happened in the past, about what went well and also what didn't go so well, so it doesn't get repeated. But everything else in the day is not based on what they've done wrong or what behaviours they've got or all those kind of things, which is usually what I talked about in meetings, because we don't feel you can build somebody a good life based on deficits. If you do that, you're always looking at risk and what can't be done, rather than with this, we're looking at what's possible and what's probable, and what people's hopes and dreams are for their future, because they're much more likely to happen. So for that kind of meeting to happen, there's no use having professionals there that have only met the person once and don't know anything about them. You're much better off having people like, I don't know, we've had the local taxi driver at one of our meetings, and that was because he used to take this woman to the place she went during the day every day for years, and he built up an amazing relationship with her. He'd, you know, come and had tea with her and stuff like that, and they were friends at the end of the day, but he could contribute because he knew that person. So anybody really, we say to families, you know, bring along people who are going to help you, who you think are positive people that are going to help you to get a good life for the future. So those are the people. As I said before, we try and find somewhere, this is a picture of one of the meetings, but somewhere that somebody feels comfortable, basically. So we have had them in all over the place, but it's just lovely sometimes to be able to share a lunch. I know my colleague Jo did one the other day, and the woman really wanted a Chinese takeaway for lunch, so we got that delivered in, and everybody has just shared lunch as well as doing the planning. So the things we talk about, they're quite fluid. However, what we're trying to do is to get all the things we need to know about somebody to be able to get them somewhere to live, get them the right support, get them the right people to support them, and to get them thinking about what they want to do with their lives. And professionals would say at the end of the day, it's a kind of service specification. Don't like the word service, however, it kind of gives you an idea of it's everything we need to know about getting this person out and getting them a life. So we talk about what's important for them. It's very sad sometimes that people have not been asked these things, and therefore sometimes it's really hard for them to think about some of the areas that we're talking about, which you or I would find probably easier to do because we're valued citizens. But it's a starting point, so we try. I think one of the saddest things for me is when I ask people what people's skills and talents are. And the reason we ask about this is because we all build on our skills and talents when we're thinking about what we want to do for a job, or what we want to do to kind of get ourselves going in the world. And sometimes, and especially from services that support people in hospital, they haven't got a clue what people's skills and talents. If you ask them what their behaviours were or what their risks were, they'd be able to spout them off very quickly. But actually, when you ask what people's skills and talents are, they haven't got a clue, which is very sad. So we want to know what people admire about them, what their hopes and dreams are, and the important people that are in their lives, because this isn't just about trying to get paid services for people. We're trying to ensure that that we use the natural networks that they have as well, and that we look at people being supported as much as they can by people that they don't have to pay. And that's not about saving money, it's about, we know that natural connections and natural support is going to stick and stay around, whereas paid support, you know, if somebody gets a better offer or wants to start a family, even however close their working relationship is with the person, they're going to be in their life forever. But if you're not being paid, and if you're friends, and if you're family, and if you're part of the local community, you're more likely to stick around. We look at what help. So we start with this, again, not just about paid help, but assistive technology. And we're looking at trying to get a person specification together so that the person knows who they want to recruit to these jobs. So what kind of personalities have they got on well within the past? You know, so that they match with somebody. Because again, I can't imagine if I was a person having to work for 8 hours with somebody that I really didn't get on with. That's like torture to me. So, you know, you need people to work with you who you get on with and who you've chosen. The other bit that is often a revelation to people is we start talking about, how do you want to be involved in recruiting your staff? How do you want to be involved in training your staff? Do you want your mum and dad to be involved? All those kind of things, which again, sadly, I don't know why, but it's still not happening. We look at home, and again, we look at all the options for home. So we don't, very rarely do people say, well, I don't think ever people say they want to live in residential care. And the people we work with, because they have specific needs, and they often like their own space. You know, some of the things that have gone wrong in the past have been about sharing with people that they don't get on with. They need their own home. And this is where we get into the contention of people saying this is a very expensive way of doing things. Well, it isn't. There's a lot of different housing options, and a lot for people, you know, that we can tap into, but are just not known, because services just basically often look at residential, or what they call supported living, which again, I don't like that word, but is a kind of form of residential care. So afterwards we write up a plan, and it's called a life plan. We can do easy read versions if they're needed, and it basically has all the details that we've talked about, so that it can then go, the person can use it to find a support provider if they want, or to use a personal budget and to recruit their own team, and also it can be used to find housing as well. Oh, I've come to the end quicker than I thought, which is good. I thought I'd just read you out a poem that was done ages ago. A long time ago, I worked in Cornwall. There was a big abuse scandal in a hospital called Budock Hospital, and I was part of the change team down there, and we had to re-look at what was happening where people were living, and there was a load of houses where people were just being plonked together, but they were being told this is your own home and you're a tenant, but it wasn't at all like that. So I had to think about helping them to change what they were doing and to improve the quality of what was going on for people. And at the time, and I still am very involved with Simon Duffy and Keys to Citizenship, which is kind of the thing that drives me and was my light bulb moment, I suppose, when I started to think about citizenship. Anyway, I did some training with people down in Cornwall, and it was about, you know, what is a real home like, what's citizenship, you know, what are the things that we need to do so that people could quality check what was going on. And part of the training was that people had to come up with something to explain that they'd got what it was that I'd been training them about that day, which was citizenship. And one bloke wrote this poem. We were all blown away, and since then it's kind of been doing the rounds, but it's brilliant. So it's called Hands Off, It's My Home. I don't have a rotor blue tacked to my wall. I don't expect to find one anywhere at all. If the telephone is ringing, I pick up to see who calls. I don't have great big posters about slips and trips and falls. I decide what happens when I go to bed or eat. I decide who enters in, which people I will greet. I decide on furniture, which bed, which bath, which seat, and I decide the temperature and when to turn up heat. All the things around my house, they all belong to me. I don't have strangers coming in changing channels on TV. All the post I get is opened by the addressee. I have dominion in my castle and I have my privacy. I don't use my home for meetings, training or interviews. The colours in my carpet are my favourite chosen hues. All records kept about me are accurate and true, and if I really wanted to, I'd own 100 shoes. I will make my choices now, make my own decisions, and any plan I make contains my own wishes and visions. Any person in my home is only here from my permission. No office do I have here, no rules and no restrictions. I decide to employ to a vacant situation. I decide on where I want to store my medication. I have the right to keep my mother out of my accommodation, and I don't need to have a weekly fire evacuation. No risk assessments stop me from trying something new. I make my own mind up about everything I do. When I need support, I will let you know if it is you. Hands off, it's my home, or Sam Sly and I will sue. So that was written by Adrian, but it kind of sums up what we're trying to achieve when we do life planning with people. Thank you very much. Okay. Hello.
It's really bad because I forget to unmute myself. So I'm just saying, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sam. I shared the YouTube video that was made with that. Yeah,
that was Ben.
So there's a few people who've seen it, but it's great seeing the words and a picture of Adrian as well. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Sam. If anybody's got any questions, you can pop them in. Otherwise, we will hand over to Heather. Heather, I'm just going to click the share screen and it should come to you with a message. You'll need to, yeah, cool.
Is that?
And if you pop your slides up, we're off and ready.
Yeah. Okay. You have to bear with me a minute. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hello, my name's Heather Rowell and I lead the Local Area Coordination Programme on the Isle of Wight. The reason I was attracted to this is exactly what it says here. It's about taking people away from services unless they really need them, and enabling them to be contributing, valued members of the community and citizens. So that's what we're working towards. So what is local area coordination about? It's about supporting people to think about what their good life might look like, and what their vision for the future is and how they can achieve it. Again, as Sam was talking about, it's very, very much focused on people's strengths, their experience, their knowledge, their talents, their gifts, and how they can utilise those to live a more meaningful life in the community. So that's what it's all about, and it's about building individual family capacity and resilience. So it's about supporting people to improve their health and well-being, utilising what they're good at and what they like to do, and building supportive natural relationships within the community for people as well. So bringing people who are marginalised through disability, mental health problems, etc., into the community as welcoming and inclusive citizens, valued by everybody. And in turn, this then reduces the need for dependency on services. What we look for is what we call local, no-cost, local solutions for people. So friends helping neighbours, neighbours helping friends, people in the community working together for a better life for everybody. So local area coordination started in Western Australia about 30 years ago, and it was very much developed there around helping people with learning disabilities to move from institutional settings into welcoming inclusive communities amongst their friends and their families, and how they could do that in a positive way. It's grown and developed. It's operational in New Zealand, Scotland, and across parts of the UK, and also in Ireland. In England and Wales now I think there's 13 areas where local area coordination has become embedded as part of local authority, I guess, support for people. So one of the first places was Derby City, who developed this approach, and that's how we heard about it on the Isle of Wight. And it's growing in momentum and interest, and people are starting to see that actually this is the way forward for people. So it's very person-centered, and it's also about actually how can we change the way we do things as a system. So there's elements of reform, because if we work in different ways with people and put people at the forefront of that rather than doing 2 and 4, then actually people manage their health and well-being much better than we can manage it for them. We just need to learn that, really, I think, as a system. Local area coordination works within a set of principles and values. So it's very much about citizenship. It's very much about everybody in the community has the same rights and responsibilities and should have the opportunities to participate and be part of their life within their community. It's very much about building relationships, and those are what we call natural relationships. So where people come together because of similar interests and similar passions and learn from each other. That brings a sort of richness to community life. People have a natural authority. They're the experts in their own lives. They know far more about themselves and what's important to them in their communities, and the best place to make those decisions. It's about learning, learning and developing contribution, providing information accurately and timely for people. It's about people being in control of their lives and having choices and being able to decide what's important for them. And about communities. Communities are very rich places, and we need to support their growth and their development and tap into that as a resource for people, and not ignore actually some of the great stuff that's going on in community. And it's about contribution. How can we support people to become contributing citizens rather than passive recipients of services? It's about working together. So we work very, very closely with our partners across services, so with mental health colleagues, adult social care colleagues, children's services, as well as people in the community. and our political leaders. And it's a very much a complementary approach to support services and support people. So it's very much a local, it's a personal local human approach. So each local area, so what we have is a local area coordinator works within a defined geographical area in their community. The area is about 10 to 12,000 population, and what we work very much with the community to try and understand what their community looks like, actually, because we don't know. We make assumptions, but actually the community will tell us how their community looks and feels. So the local area coordinator works within that defined geographical area. They don't have an office, they don't have a desk, they don't have a place where they're based. They work within the community. They spend their first few months in post getting to know their community, so building relationships with local people, local organisations, local businesses, talking to people on the streets, and really get to know and become part of that community. They learn about the assets in the community, they learn about the place, and they learn about the contribution of people already and what's going on. So they've got starting to get a picture and of those connections that are already there. They are then introduced to people who might be looking for something. So they're introduced to people who might be lonely or isolated or depressed or looking for work or who have a disability and are very disconnected. And it's very much a voluntary relationship. So we have introductions. We don't have referrals. Referrals suggest a powerful person is referring you to another powerful person, whereas our relationships are very equal. So an introduction is about actually, would you like to meet the local area coordinator? Where would you like to meet them? In a place that works for you, that you're comfortable with, and it starts with a conversation. So we don't assess people. We don't go in and talk about what's wrong. We meet people and we build a relationship and we get to know them. The first meeting could be 3 or 4 hours long, or it could be half an hour. It very much depends on that person. It's led by the individual. When the local area coordinators were appointed, they were actually interviewed by their community. So these are some pictures of some of the community interviews that we held on the island. I went out and talked to local people in each of the areas where we were going to recruit. So the interviews were very different. So in each area we had different people on the panel. We had a full day for the candidates where the community came together in the morning, and the candidates had to facilitate a conversation with the community around what they loved about the community, what was good, what was going on, who did they know, what could they do together to make it better. And it really, that really started that conversation and really sort of built the momentum for when that person came into post. The people who we invited to join us were all sorts of people, anybody who's interested in coming, really. So we had people with disabilities, with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, we had young people, we had older people, we had parish councillors, we had people who are very active in their community, and relationships started to build between those people as well over that morning and over lunch. And it really, so when the local area coordinator actually came into post, they had a network already started that they could work with. And then in the afternoon, the candidates were interviewed by a panel of 5 people. Myself, somebody from the Local Area Coordination Network, which is a national organisation that's supporting the growth and development of this approach across England and Wales, and 3 people drawn from the morning of those interviews. So they were local people. So they really had the power and the authority, and they made the choice. They made the ultimate decision about who they wanted to work in their community. And it's really, really powerful stuff, because those people now are really embedded in their community. They're really trusted and they're really valued, and also they're accountable to their community. So they're not only accountable to me in the local authority as their employer, but they're accountable to the people in their community who they are actually working for and with. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories to sort of give a bit of an example about how this works in practice. So this is Steve's story. Steve is a 60-year-old man he was living in a care home. He has got a learning disability and he'd been living in a care home for 5 years. He should only been there for 6 months after the loss of family members, so he was unable to live with family any longer. He met the local area coordinator in the area in which he lived. He was going out quite a lot, quite active in the community, going to various clubs and groups, and she got talking to him about a relationship. And he told her he didn't want to be in the care home. He wanted to live independently. And she spent time with him, supporting him to have a reassessment through adult social care so that this move could be facilitated, but also about actually what his strengths were. So what could he do for himself? What did he want to do for himself? And actually, what did he want help with? So he was very much in control of this. So it took quite a long time, but he has moved to supported living, a place of his choice, in the community of his choice. He's now an active participating community member, building relationships with local people. He's got a girlfriend. He's going to the pub on a Friday night. And it's what he wants, and he looks better, he's healthier, he's happier, and he's in control of his future, and he's in a place where he wants to be. Now, possibly that wouldn't have happened without meeting the local area coordinator. He was in social services possibly would say, well, he was in a safe place, he was getting care and support needs met, and he was being looked after. But actually, this was what was important to him. So it's a really positive outcome for him. This is another story. This is Betty. Betty was introduced to the local area coordinator by her GP because she was lonely and isolated. The reason for that was because she'd been utilising a local dialer bus service, which Betty she was 88 when we met her. She's 90 now. And she was using the dialer bus service to come into Newport to do her shopping. And the bus service collected her and a number of other people of similar age, and they became friends, and this was a network of support and friendship for Betty and for the other people on the bus. The local authority cut the bus service because of financial situation, so she had lost that network, those friendships, and actually Betty was more concerned about the other people on the bus than herself. So the local area coordinator met her and talked to her about this, and then he supported her to go along and talk to some local community organisations, the local supermarket manager. They met various charities and who'd got minibuses that were sitting there one day a week doing nothing, and one of them said, well, yeah, we could do that. We could offer a solution. We could use our minibus. We could pick you and your friends up. We could take you into town to do your shopping, and there will be a minimal cost to that. So Betty rounded up her group of friends, and the service started, and it's developed from that as well, because they're also, sometimes I'll drop people off at the hospital to visit family members, and also Betty's network of friendship has increased because this charity also has another arm, and they've got social activities and things going on. So she's increased her network of friends. She's very valued within that community because of what she's given to them, and because she's contributed and supported this charity to develop this additional service, met a lot of people's needs, and people are very happy. And Betty, sadly, one of the ladies died a little while ago, and Betty went to the funeral, and this lady's daughter sought her out and thanked her for actually what she'd done. So this 88-year-old lady is a real asset within her community and is really supporting other people. And a little while ago, Betty had a heart attack. She's okay now, but she was in hospital. And while she was in hospital, they were coming to see her literally by bus. When she was in hospital before, nobody came to see her, but now lots of people were coming to see her. And when she came out of hospital, somebody was there with her bread and her milk, and somebody came and picked her up. And people just rallied around her to help her because she'd helped them. So, you know, this is real community helping community. And she didn't need any of our traditional statutory services for when she came home from hospital. She was fit and well very quickly because she had lots of people around her. There's been a huge amount of evaluations around local area coordination across England, Wales, and previously from Australia, shown, which shows a lot of impacts for the system in terms of reducing GP appointments, reducing dependency on formal services, and around, you know, simplifying the system and making it easier for people. Our local area coordinators are very much becoming the local point of contact in their community, the go-to person. There's also been some financial benefits that show some really, really positive savings to the system in a couple of evaluations, where people, by keeping people out of the system, actually, how much money are we saving the system? You know, we're finding those local solutions. But for the impact for people is huge. You know, people are more in control of their lives. They've got increased capacity. They've got greater confidence. They've got better knowledge. They know what's going on locally, and they've got a voice. They you know, they can speak up, and they feel valued and worthwhile in their community, rather than just somebody who's got a lot of problems. So there are a number of keys to success to this approach. There is a national framework, values and principles that I spoke about earlier. The design of the programme is really important. We've been very true in our design on the Isle of Wight to what's happened in Australia and what else has happened in the UK that has worked really, really well. Strong leadership across the system is really powerful and really helps to get this approach embedded across the health and social care system in an area. And it's really important to stay true and stick to those principles. I've got a team of 9 local area coordinators, and we're constantly having conversations about actually, are we still ensuring that person is at the forefront of every conversation? Are we making sure their voice is being heard? Are we listening to what they have to say? Are we not doing 2 and 4 people? We have to continually pull ourselves back, because naturally we want to help, and it's quite hard sometimes to stand back and allow people to lead their own lives and just be there on the periphery to help things move along. And there is as I say, there's a national local area coordination network in England and Wales that really supports us across the country to enable us to maintain the integrity of the programme and the way that we work and what we do. And it's about, you know, that slow fix. We're playing the long game. You know, it's starting small, growing and developing, and we know that this is really going to create change in the future for people. There aren't any quick fixes, although we do see some really positive outcomes for people. It's that long term stuff that's really, really important. And it brings a lot of challenges around the way that we work as a system and the way other people work within the system, and we're constantly coming up against those challenges and those discussions. But that's good, healthy stuff to keep talking about. Actually, are we doing this the right way? You know, is this the best thing for local people? And it's really important to recruit the right people, and, you know, recruiting them through the community. You know, we've had huge success. The community definitely are much better at this than me, and they've picked some really, really good people. And I have a team of 9 who come from, they're a multidisciplinary team. They come from a range of backgrounds, from social care, health. I've got nurses, housing officers, people who work with domestic abuse, a whole range of professional backgrounds, but they all come with the same integrity around the values and principles. And actually, it's about putting that person at the heart of everything that we do. Okay, that's me. Is that all right?
Thank you very much, Heather. That's great. I shall just take back my screen. Yeah. And go to, because I see there are a couple of questions. Sorry, get there. So thanks very much, Sam and Heather. I see there's a couple of questions, but I'll hand over to Ernest to read out the questions, or maybe unmute the people who are asking.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks, Sam and Heather. That was great. Yeah, we have some questions. I can read them out. I also have a couple of questions myself. Actually, so maybe we'll do. There's some questions for Sam and some questions for Heather. So maybe starting with Heather, and I'll ask my question first, or it's a couple of questions, so I'll group them into one. I was just wondering what do you do with somebody who's been in, let's say, in an institution, or maybe you call it a hospital for a long time, and doesn't have any family, or they've lost touch and they're not interested, whether you would, and has been very isolated for a long time, would you then involve the people he has lived with in that institution, or would you just how would you find
is that for me, Ines?
That's for you, Sam. Yeah, how would you find the people who know well? And also, okay, maybe
sorry, you can.
You can answer them both. And the other bit is sort of what happens to the life plan once it's done. I mean, who is in charge of making sure that it's implemented, and what happens if things cannot be done the way you've planned in the life plan? So how do you monitor as well what happens after? So that's for you, Sam.
Okay, so there's lots of people, just like you've said, that that don't have, if somebody's been in a hospital for a long time, they may not have family. I mean, the first thing we ask is, who do you want to come? Do you know what I mean? Because the person themselves knows who's important to them. So that's the first bit. But we've had people that have had advocates, and people to represent them like that as well, who have come along to things. But yeah, it's just whoever knows them, really knows them well. But also there's quite a lot of preparation goes on. So we give before we have the meeting, because of course for somebody it's a big, it's quite a daunting thing, isn't it, sitting in a group and talking about your life. So we've got lots of preparation stuff that we send out, and lots that's done in easy read, and we ask them to find somebody who they trust to start to think about what they want to say, and get that down before they get there, so that they don't forget any of it when they come. So that's what we do there. What was the second bit? I've forgotten that now.
What happens to the life plan?
So basically, there has been struggles with this, because we're usually asked by what's over here called the clinical commissioning groups, which is the health people that pay the money, or NHS England, who again are the health people that pay money, and some of the social services to do these. And the form, they like their systems, don't they? And they like their forms, and this isn't a form. Do you know what I mean? It's a plan, and it's got pictures in, and it's it's the person's, really. So it doesn't fit in their system, and that's where it kind of falls off sometimes. But we make it extremely clear that at the end of the day, the only people that are going to make sure this doesn't get lost and keep poking it at people and putting it in front of people's noses is the person and their family. So we're absolutely clear that this is theirs. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, and it's also a process that this is the beginning of it. So at one time I was a support provider, so we ran an organisation that supported people out of hospital, and we use this as our basis, to then review people's plans and review what they were doing on a yearly basis. And we used to celebrate their achievements and things, but update this plan. So it isn't, you know, set in concrete forever. It should be something that's a live document that lives and develops as the person does. Okay, so the main bit is it belongs to the person and their family, because everybody else is going to change over time, aren't they?
Yeah. And there is now the question from the participant. I think it links to this. And we also have, there's 2 questions. So again, I'll try to say them at the same time. So the first question is what do you run into a situation where the person wants something different than what their family wants for them?
Yeah, and sometimes, so if we're made aware to start with, because as a facilitator, that's what your job is. Do you know what I mean? Is to ensure that everybody kind of can say and to start talking about those things. So yes, we have done, most definitely. But in those situations, we've you know, ensured that the person's been able to do a bit of work on what it is, do you know what I mean, that they want, so that when we do talk about it all, but it's much more likely that it's the professionals that want something different. You know, it's there are times, but not that many, to be quite honest. And you've got to remember as well, the majority of people we work with have been in a hospital for years and years and years, and they and their family just want them out. Do you know what I mean? Want them to have a life again. So I mean, I think the saddest bit is the lack of expectations of what people can do with life. So, you know, even for people and families sometimes, because nobody's ever talked to them about what the possibilities are, they assume that you know, that they're going to have to live in a residential care home, that they're going to, you know, and there's so much more that can be done, but it just isn't, because that's the easiest option, isn't it? So that's the bit that saddens me sometimes, is people's expectations are very low.
And would you involve the family if they've been estranged, you know, if it's obvious?
Well, it depends if the person, I mean, you can't do a meeting like this if there's people in the room who really hate, do you know what I mean, who won't communicate, or, you know, I mean, there's some really hard situations. So, and again, you know, it's often been with professionals where it's broken down terribly, relationships with people and families, and we have had to have them. I know my friend Jo the other day had one where they had to do it in 2 bits because the family would not have the professionals in, and the professionals had to be there to be able to make it happen. Yeah, but you know, there's quite a lot of therapeutic work goes on in facilitating these, because you're just trying, you know what I mean, you're kind of going over the past, but getting everybody to focus on the future and learn from what's happened and not dwell on it, because it ain't gonna, you know, it's not gonna help the person move on and move out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the second question is how do you get people to agree to this process of life planning?
Yeah, well, that's one. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is how I put it, because it is it's a consent. You know, people have to consent to this, so you can't do it if people don't want to do it. However, the reality of this is that if you don't want to do it this way, the professionals are going to do a discharge plan for you. Do you know what I mean? And the chances are in those situations that they are not going to be where you and your family are at the centre of everything, because traditional services aren't like that. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, really, if you know what I mean. A kind of a decision that there isn't, you know, you can either have a meeting and think about it and be the person that makes all the decisions, or do it how it's always been done, which is they look around to see what residential care homes have got space, and there you go.
Yeah. And in terms of the larger organizations, Sam, so for example, how would you sell it to the NHS, you know, or is it?
Well, I mean, interestingly, because we have something called care and treatment reviews here, which started when there was a big abuse scandal in a hospital in Bristol, and now there's a national programme of reviewing everybody in hospitals, and over time, life planning for people people have got to really understand it better. And I think, listening over and over again to how hospitals and professionals are planning for somebody to move out has made a lot of, because the reviewers are often family members or people that have an interest in getting people out. So because it's very, it's person-centered, it's kind of getting more. So I'd say over the last couple of years, it's much more seen as the right thing to do now. So we get a lot of people asking for them, but professionals still, they don't understand, still don't get a lot of it. They don't get the bit that it's a facilitative role and that you can actually, work with families very closely and that's not a conflict and all those kind of things. But it's gradually getting there, which is really, really good.
Yeah, that is very good. There is a small follow-up question. Do you only work with people who are about to be discharged? So decisions have already been made.
So Nick and I, Nick in another role, in another life, worked for an organisation where we did a project with children, and they were children that potentially, if things didn't get done right, do you know what I mean? If we didn't sort things out then and get people the right kind of support and thinking about the future in a positive way, might end up in institutions. So we did a project with children, but this is the kind, it's because it's about a person, you can do it with anybody. So we used to support somebody who had locked-in syndrome, and we did a plan for them. We've done plans for people with mental health needs. I mean, anybody, can do it, and also anyone can facilitate. You've just got to, I guess, have the values and the knowledge of what's possible and probable, possible for people, rather than just thinking about services all the time.
Yeah, so you're saying you can do it both as a prevention measure.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Somebody's already been in a hospital.
I mean, I would love to see this done with all children at a very early age, the process of this, and this be how you work with somebody, because if you got off on this footing, and the family and the person felt they were in control and felt they were listened to, you wouldn't get half the blinking problems, I think, that you get now around, families not trusting professionals and people being in awful situations where they've got no voice.
Yeah, but if you just a small clarification also, if you get, let's say, for these people, these 100 people you're working with now, there is some commitment by the NHS that they will implement these life plans, right? So whoever, they sort of agree beforehand that they will listen to what you're going to.
Yeah. I mean, some of it falls down because people still don't get it, and that's nothing. That's about people not valuing people as citizens. So at the end of the day, a lot of everything goes right back to we don't really subconsciously think people with learning disabilities deserve a real life, which is the thing that we all struggle with and we all battle against every day, I guess.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Sam. Now for Heather, there is a question, Heather, about how is this program of local area coordination funded? And I suppose I would also be interested, so that was a question from a participant, but maybe also is it a long-term program? I mean, do you have funding for a number of years, or you review it on an annual basis or something?
Well, when we started, we were looking at starting small and growing the program. So we started with 3 local area coordinators, and they were funded by Public Health. And the reason for that was we have been working in the areas of health improvement for years, but actually what we know is it's about the causes of the causes. So why people's situations in life that are having a deficit on their health and well-being, and actually what can we do to support them to have a better life. And then they might go on and think about actually lifestyle as well, if that's their choice. So that's why we started the approach in public health. On the island, we were also part of a vanguard, an NHS vanguard, which was about transformational change. And the programme was very much about a person-centred approach, pushing services back and looking at those assets in the community to help find those health solutions for people. So that enabled us to secure some additional funding through that. I don't know what the long-term vision is. We're just undergoing an evaluation at the moment. If that's positive, then I'm hopeful that partners will see this as something that really supports their programs. So in particular, we're doing a lot of work with mental health. 20% of our introductions come through mental health services, and that's supporting people to stay out of services and reconnect them with the community to prevent them bouncing back in. So I'm hoping that through the work that we're doing, that people will see the real benefit for their service and actually will support the long-term future. But at the moment, that is unclear. In different areas of the country, funding streams come from different organisations. So in some areas, housing funding, some area local area coordinators, adult social care, various partners, for it to be embedded in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. And just another question: where do most, you just mentioned that most introductions come from the mental health.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask: is it mostly through the GPs? I mean, how do people, how do you find people who need introduction to the coordinator?
Most get an awful lot from mental health services because people might phone them up in crisis. Mental health services, actually, they're not eligible for a particular mental health service, or there's a waiting list. So quite often they contact us and we come alongside and support people to think about what their good life might look like and work with them on that. We might also support them to access a particular mental health service if that's what they need. But sometimes people then don't need mental health services. They find other solutions locally to support them. We also get introductions from GP practices, particularly people who are lonely, who are going to their GPs a lot because of loneliness and isolation. And we also get introductions from across the health and social care system, so from adult social care, children's services. We've done some really good work with families, from schools, from fire, police, community safety, local community, neighbours, friends, people who are concerned about somebody. So it's right across the piece, really.
And how does one local area coordinator deal with all these people? Is it, because I imagine if they're doing a good job, then you get more interest. So are they meant to kind of discharge that person into the community, or do they continually stay, in touch with the person? Because I imagine it'd be difficult once you have more and more people who you support.
They work on average with between 50 to 60 individuals or families at any one time. But some of that might be light touch, some of it might be a bit more intense. Sometimes they do a very specific piece of work with somebody. But because the approach is very much about the individual and what's important to them, and the individual's in the driving seat. And because we don't arrange to see somebody every Tuesday at 10 o'clock for an hour, it's about putting people in control. Actually, their demands on our time isn't always that great, because it's about letting people go. But we stay connected, so that, you know, very often the local area coordinators will go to a particular coffee morning once a week, so people know they can pop in, have a 5-minute conversation. So it's that very light touch stuff that actually is quite preventative and supports people to get on with their lives and live their lives, really. And we just sort of are alongside them, and they sort of touch base with us sometimes. And sometimes we might do something a little bit more intense. It's very, very, but it seems to work.
Yeah, no, it sounds very good. Yes, thank you. Nick, did you have any questions? We don't have any more questions here. I think, yeah, both approaches are really good. It's just we need to think about how we could convince, you know, local authorities or, you know, service providers or whoever to take up these these approaches. That's the challenge. And yeah.
I haven't got any specific questions. I just think that the often the work that Sam's doing doesn't get the support from people like Heather out in the community.
No,
so often services are really, even sometimes the support that's offered is very specialist, and the local area coordination thing adds something to being able to help people get more involved in their local community and things. So that was kind of the reason why we put these two presentations together, because and I know that spoken with Camille and other people on this webinar and many others, that actually that community connection thing is the bit that gets lost when people are talking about institutions and moving people out. Sorry, Sam, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, it has made me think really as well. Do you know what I mean? Whether it would be worth for people asking, do you know what I mean, if they can link in with them, or if they want somebody to come along, because it would give it a really good other dimension to it all.
No, I mean, I think it's those things around the isolation that people and the segregation people have experienced in institutions, and then having their voice listened to with the really important people, but then having that extra support to link people into that community where they get a chance to develop new friendships and new relationships and follow their passions and do the things that work for them. And it's together, it becomes really powerful, I think. So no specific questions in this, but just an explanation why these two presentations sit really well together. And I think they're two of the kind of key parts when we're talking about closing institutions that need to be there. We've had presentations about personal planning before, but we've never really thought about that community angle. So I think that's good. Shall I move on?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think. I mean,
I've just found the slide that I didn't edit this morning. Okay. Sam and Heather's emails are already in the slide set, and I'll edit this afterwards. We'll send these round as a PDF, and also there'll be the link on the website with a big newsletter. There's always an invitation to people to send ideas and things they want to share through the newsletter. We've got 120 something people now on our mailing list, and we're kind of trying to turn it into one newsletter with links to everybody else who's doing things as well. So anything that people want to share, it's always very, very welcome. The next webinar that we have is at the end of September. This will be the first of our autumn and winter program, which we're just in the process of confirming now. The one in September, which we'll send information out for in the next couple of weeks probably, will be around thinking around the roles of parents and families, in particular something called Partners in Policy Making from Scotland. And we're also hoping to be able to hear from a parent and others who are leading work in Romania around inclusion. We'll send the registration link as we usually do in many different emails and in the newsletter and through Facebook. And just a reminder, we've got over 20 different countries now. We've got a mailing list of 120 different people. The more the coalition is shared and people find out about it, the better. It's all free. We're not funded to do this, so it's a really strong example of how people all over Europe are trying to do something and contribute and share what they know. All our resources, all the presentations, and all the links to the recordings are on the European Coalition for Community Living website. That's communityliving.info. And there'll be a link for that in every newsletter that we send out. And yes, please support us, please share the information, and tell people that it's a really good thing. So that's goodbye from me, and a goodbye from...
Goodbye.
Thank you again to Heather and Sam.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care all. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.